hereby move that a bill for an act to repeal the Emergency Powers Act 1961 and enact the Emergency Powers Act 2019 to provide for the declaration of a state of emergency and for related matters, House Bill 15 be read the second time. I so move.
Any second that, please. Honorable Monguno, please lead the debate.
Federal Constituency of Borno State. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the Constitution, being the grand norm of the land, has expressly under Section 305 of the Constitution, 1999 as amended, gave Mr. President the powers to proclaim a state of emergency where there is breakdown in peace, order, and good governance of any particular part of the country under Section 305 of the Constitution, subject subject to the permission of Mr. Speaker. I will read the provision. The provision states, subject to the provision of this Constitution, the President may, by instrument published in the official gazette of the Government of the Federation, issue a proclamation of a state of emergency in the Federation or any part thereof. So, pursuant to the exercise of these powers, there is the Emergency Powers Act of 1961 that tends to regulate the declaration of a state of emergency where it was proclaimed by Mr. President. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, the Emergency Powers Act of 1961 has become obsolete, and by virtue of the fact that this House, by virtue of Section 4 of the 1999 Constitution as amended, has the powers to make laws and amend laws where it is necessary. And it was pursuant to these powers that I'm inviting this Honorable House to repeal and enact and reenact the Emergency Powers Act of 1961 so that it will be in tandem with the objective and subjective realities of today. Because laws are not supposed to be static, laws are supposed to be organic, and they will change with the changing times in society. The 1961 Emergency Powers Act is not as elaborate as it is now. And now the world has changed, especially in Nigeria, with the avalanche of the problem of insecurity that we have across the nooks and crannies of this country. Boko Haram, insurgency, kidnappings, and what have you, that we have across the nooks and crannies of this country. As at 1961, we don't have this security threat that tends to even threaten the corporate existence of this country. So what this bill seeks to do is to repeal and reenact the 2019 Emergency Powers Act to bring it in tandem with the objective and subjective realities of the society today, pursuant to the powers conferred on this House by Section 4 of the 1999 Constitution as amended. Mr. Speaker, honorable members, what this bill also seeks to do is to confer power on the National Assembly to make the executive, pursuant to any regulation made under the Emergency Powers Act, to be brought to the National Assembly for approval. And this is done in order to stem a situation whereby absolute power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Because once you give absolute power to an individual or an arm of government, there is tendency for abuse of that power. And then under this bill, if it is finally approved by this August Assembly, such regulations or such powers that are exercised pursuant to the Emergencies Powers Act has to be brought to the National Assembly for approval. For example, under the Emergencies Powers Act, an individual can be detained more than the time that is allowed by the Constitution for him to be formally brought, arraigned in a court of law. So under such situations, there is clear provision in this bill that is before this House that if it is exceeding 1 month, then such order should be brought to the National Assembly for approval. There should be constant report to the National Assembly every month on all the powers that were exercised pursuant to the Emergencies Powers Act in order to stop a situation of executive recklessness and sometimes executive arrogance in the discharge of that power. So, Mr. Speaker, honourable members, essentially what this bill seeks to do is to further elaborate on the Emergencies Powers Act and also give National Assembly power to regulate the exercise of such powers to stop a situation whereby there will be abuse as a result of these powers that is conferred on the executive arm of government. So I am inviting my colleagues to support the second reading of this bill. Thank you.
Those in favor of the bill should say aye. Those against, please say nay. Guys, have it. Clerk, bill is now referred to the Committee on Justice. You can read the...
A bill for now to repeal the Emergency Power Act 1961 and now the Emergency Power Act 2019 to provide for the declaration of state of emergency and for related matters. Second reading.